Hello everyone, my name is Welsh217, but you can just call me Welsh. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about a movie called The Brothers Grimm, a film released in 2005 from Miramax Films. Before we jump into the video, I need to explain a couple of things. Mainly that this was actually a really difficult video to make, because in doing my research for this film and rewatching it and writing my notes, I realized something kind of horrifying. This movie is simply just bad. I decided I was going to approach this one a little bit differently. This is going to be one of the very few, if not the only, video like this in this series. Mainly what I like to focus on is just fun films that are stupid, they know they're kind of stupid, they definitely don't take themselves too seriously, so they're still fun to watch. This movie does not qualify for that, but I am going to try and break it down like I normally do with the other videos in this series. So, without further ado, let's talk about why The Brothers Grimm is so bad, it's brilliant. I want to start with the cast of this film, because with an A-list cast like this movie has, this movie looks really good on paper. It really doesn't seem like you could go wrong with a cast like this, but that's not always the case, and definitely not the case with a lot of films. This movie stars Matt Damon, Heath Ledger, Peter Stormare, Lena Headey, Jonathan Pryce, and Monica Bellucci. Boobs. At this point in his career, Matt Damon already had 2 of the Bourne films under his belt, proving that he was more than just a Hollywood heartthrob. Heath Ledger had had a supporting role in The Patriot, 10 Things I Hate About You, and during the same year that The Brothers Grimm was released, he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor in Brokeback Mountain. Peter Stormare is just Peter Stormare.
I said we cut off your Johnson!
If you are familiar with any of the roles he's ever been cast in, he's a great actor. And even in movies that are not great that he gets cast in, he still comes to life on the screen. I love him as an actor. Lena Headey, however, hadn't really hit her stride yet.
Shame!
Let's just say this, you don't get to play one of the lead roles in Game of Thrones whose character gets all the way to the final season without dying by being a shitty actor. Here's the thing with this cast though, just because you have good actors doesn't mean they can make bad material suddenly good. This movie suffers tremendously from this. The next thing that looks good on paper for this movie is the director, Terry Gilliam. If you're not familiar with Terry Gilliam, he got his big break on a little-known show from the BBC called Monty Python's Flying Circus, in which he was a co-star as well as the head animator for all the cartoons that you see throughout the series. Probably one of his most notable roles is he's the guy following around King Arthur banging the coconuts together throughout the entire film to make the horse noises.
Halt!
Yes, that guy is the director of this film. Before directing The Brothers Grimm, he had directed Brazil, The Fisher King, 12 Monkeys, and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. All of these films showcase what a fantastically brilliant director he is capable of being. But then, there's this movie. I am going to delve into more detail about the technical aspects behind this film that made a couple of things go wrong. Before we do that, let's go ahead and get through the synopsis of this film. So, if you care, massive spoilers for the entire story ahead. Trust me, you aren't missing anything. Are you ready? Here we go. The movie opens with a young boy helping his mother tend to his sister, who is ill.
Put another log on the fire, lad. There isn't any more firewood, Mama. Don't worry, Ma. Jake will be back soon. We'll have money for a doctor.
His younger brother returns from selling a cow with magic beans instead of money, and the older brother chastises and beats him. These are our young protagonists, Will and Jake Grimm. Jumping ahead 15 years, Will and Jake are riding into the French-occupied German town of Karlstad, where they are tracking down a witch plaguing the townsfolk.
The Brothers Grimm. Every second counts.
After they lay out their fee, they engage in a fierce battle in which they dispel the witch. It is then quickly revealed that the brothers are actually con men who prey on the superstitions of unsuspecting towns for money, with a pair of actors who help them create their illusions.
You know, just once, I'd like to sell it on the strength of my performance.
We discover that Jake is a former scholar who truly believes in the supernatural and yearns to someday discover a real fairy tale.
I'll take the beans, thanks, Will.
Stupid
We briefly cut to the forest of Marbaden, where a young girl is kidnapped by a mysterious presence. After celebrating the demise of the witch with the people of Karlstad,
A little chit, a little chat.
A little huff, a little puff. Thank you very much, Will.
the brothers are captured in the night by a French commander named Cavaldi and brought to the French general Delatome. Delatome accuses them of fraud.
It's the minimum sentences. Death.
Unless they agree to catch those responsible for the kidnapping of young girls in the town of Marbaden.
If we work for you,
That's right, Jacob.
French,
Bien sûr.
Cutting back to the forest, we see two children, a brother and sister, attempting to find the missing girls. The sister finds a carving on a cave wall and is kidnapped by a mysterious figure cloaked in fur. Cutting back to the brothers under the surveillance of Cavaldi, heading into the town of Marbaden where the kidnappings originated, to offer their services while attempting to maintain the ruse of not working for the French. The townspeople, while being skeptical and hostile, agree to let the brothers investigate the kidnappings.
The old ways have returned.
Matt Damon.
The brothers request the aid of a guide, and the townspeople direct them to a young woman named Angelica, who they refer to as the Cursed One, a trapper's daughter who knows the woods better than anyone. Attempting to use their gadgets to keep up the appearance of being ghost hunters, they are led to the center of the forest, where a great tower surrounded by stone sarcophagi lies. Angelica has a flashback of her father telling her a story of a queen who trapped herself in the tower out of vanity to avoid the plague.
But what she forgot was that plague is carried on the winds.
Nice try, you dumb bitch.
While this scene is taking place, we see a cutaway to the mysterious figure feeding Jake's horse spiders. They all return to town, where Will and Jake attempt to persuade Angelica to give them a map when she tells them two of the kidnapped girls are her sisters.
oh, that's why they call you cursed. Yeah.
We then jump to night, and Jake's horse, seeming to cry out, "Help me." A young girl, hearing the cries, leaves her house to aid the creature, and is then eaten by it. The brothers are awoken by the commotion, and see the girl in the mouth of the horse. Will immediately tries to rationalize what they have witnessed.
We could mechanize the horse, put it on tracks.
On tracks? Did you see tracks, Will? They were on tracks.
Get out of the way!
Angelica, the brothers, and Cavaldi and his team give chase into the forest, where they are literally attacked by the trees. Angelica is attacked by a wolf, whose eyes she seems to recognize. Cavaldi's men are killed in the fray, and he believes the brothers are to blame. Cavaldi returns to General Delatome with the brothers and Angelica to execute them for their supposed crimes, but the brothers manage to talk their way out of it, and Delatome grants them one final chance to redeem themselves. They return to Marbaden, this time with the aid of their actors, and Will attempts to persuade Jake to flee with him as Jake explains that he remembers the fairy tale which Angelica referred to. Jake promises to return Angelica's sisters, but Will still refuses to believe it's magical and accuses Jake of just being infatuated with Angelica.
You go wait by the horses.
She shows empathy to Will for having to keep Jacob safe, but Jacob takes it out of context and runs off.
Fuck this shit, I'm out.
Will chases after Jake while Angelica is held captive by the untrusting Cavaldi. Jake returns to the forest and tries to enter the tower with the help of the hired actors. The brothers confront one another, and Jake explains that he believes these events to be a true fairy tale, and Will reluctantly agrees to help him.
It's not beans!
The actors, terrified by the forest, slip away under the guise that they are going to retrieve additional supplies. Back at the village, Angelica and Cavaldi fail to save a young girl who is captured by a mud monster and taken into the forest.
I do believe I've soiled myself.
Meanwhile, Jake scales and enters the tower with the help of Will and discovers the queen, who then tries to use her magic mirror to coerce Jacob into helping her. Will throws a rock through the window of the tower, cracking the magic mirror, and Jacob barely escapes to find Will grabbing the last captive child, and they flee from the woods.
Trust the toad!
When they return to Marbaden, the rescued child will not wake because the queen's magic has already taken hold. Jacob then realizes that the spell has something to do with the coming lunar eclipse and warns the townspeople to hide all of their children.
Had your kids, had your wife.
At that moment, Delatome descends on the town, capturing the brothers, and then, after accusing them of lying, sentences them to death, setting the forest ablaze with the brothers in it. The brothers escape the burning forest with the help of Angelica and return to the tower to confront the queen.
Defeat! Defeat!
En route to the tower, they are attacked by the wolf again, who transforms into Angelica's father, and we discover that he is under the spell of the queen. Angelica is captured as the brothers battle her possessed father. The queen uses her magic to blow out the flames, and Delatome enters the forest to pursue the brothers after realizing they have escaped. As the brothers reach the tower, they are confronted by Delatome, his servant, and Cavaldi. Delatome commands Cavaldi to shoot the brothers, but Cavaldi has a change of heart and refuses, attempts to resign from his position, and Delatome shoots him.
Resignation accepted.
The brothers battle and defeat Delatome and his servant, at which point Jacob is launched into the tower once again, followed quickly by Will. The queen uses her magic to force Jacob to stab Will. She completes the spell and possesses Will as her new servant. Jacob smashes the queen's mirror, breaking the spell and destroying her. The brothers escape the tower, and Cavaldi, having survived his execution, tends to Will, who has been fatally wounded. Cavaldi consults a disparaged Jacob that it isn't too late to break the spell. Jacob kisses the unconscious Angelica, and she, Will, and all the children awaken, and they all return to the town victorious. Angelica thanks them, and the brothers travel on to seek out more adventures. Okay, so if that synopsis seemed super clunky and awkward, that's because it is. I'm gonna go into a little more detail now about what went wrong with this film. So, for starters, I have no idea who this movie was intended for. The humor is super silly and at times seems like it's borderline supposed to be like a kid's film, like that level of goofy. A laugh track during the comedic moments would not seem out of place. Here, I'll show you.
Buns. Watch out for the... Get in! Can you speak English, man? You got rope tied around your foot. Ciao.
It's Bavarian blood sausage with sauerkraut. I gutted the pig myself.
They're famous.
Right you are, son. The famous brothers Grimm. Look at this strapping young lad.
He is my daughter.
And a fine wife he'll make some lucky man.
The problem is that the subject matter and a lot of the imagery is far too gruesome for young children, even with it being centered on a fairy tale. At the point in the film where one of Cavaldi's men is killed by the trees, it's implied that a tree branch is shoved through his ass and comes out of his mouth. It's not exactly something you can show to tiny children, and it's not like we haven't seen tree rape before. But the tone and the attitude of the film is so juvenile and goofy that it's definitely not gonna come across as a horror film. So I am just absolutely baffled as to who the audience was supposed to be for this film. Who were they trying to market this film to? The next point I want to make is about the fairy tales. Obviously, with this movie being based on the Grimm's brothers, they're going to want to make callbacks and references to fairy tales. The problem is that they're not very reserved about this at all. They literally just cram fairy tales in there just for the sake of making a reference to them. And they never lead anywhere, they never have anything to do with the plot, they don't progress the plot forward, and they are literally just there to be mentioned, go, look, there's that one, check it off the list. Then the movie just completely forgets about it. They could have taken every single one of these references out and just based the plot around the fairy tale that they had developed for the film, and nothing would be different. The movie would probably be a whole half hour shorter too, in which this case it would have still made the 90-minute mark, so you'd still have a full-length feature film. I don't understand. I don't understand. They really just forced the fairy tales in there to go, see, look, there it is! Here's an example. There's a scene where one of the girls is kidnapped. Angelica's father, who is still possessed at this time, picks the girl up and leads her to one of the sarcophagi. As soon as the sarcophagi starts to close, the camera cuts to her feet, on which the glass slippers just suddenly appear. It has no other reason to show up other than to go, look, Cinderella! Ta-da! It has zero impact on the story, and it's never mentioned again. Not for the rest of the movie. Other than it just being completely ridiculous and obviously just shoved in there to make a fucking fairy tale checklist. At this point, any of the references are not used to forward the plot whatsoever. It becomes horribly apparent that it's never going to do that, and yet it keeps doing it for the entire movie, and it just it made rewatching the movie over and over again to prepare for this video oh god, it just started to hurt my brain. Like oh god, it hurts to think about. The next point I want to make is about the movie's set design and where it's set for most of the movie. The first 20 minutes have different locations. Doesn't matter because it's all gray and drab, but some of the interior settings are really cool looking. I have to give Terry Gilliam some credit where credit's due. There are some cinematic things that he does really well. But in this movie, the whole film suffers from setting fatigue. I don't know what else to call it. I'm just gonna call it setting fatigue. Because 70% of this movie takes place in one of two locations, either in the Thuringian Forest when they're at the tower, or in Marbaden. The whole entire latter half of this movie, from the second act on, is just bouncing back and forth between those two locations. And I think it does it about 3 different times. Going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And it's obnoxious because they go back and forth so many times that I couldn't remember which events happened when. And it confused me when I was going back through my notes. I had to go back and reference the movie when I was writing everything to make sure I had it in order because they do it so many times. It got to a certain point where I could only handle 20 minutes of the film at a time, and then I would take like 1 or 2 hours to go play video games or eat something and watch a different movie, because I had to like re-cleanse my palate. So like I just said, I do have to give Terry Gilliam credit where credit is due. As a filmmaker, he definitely has an extremely unique style. This movie still has his flavor. The lighting, and the way he likes to use the camera, he likes to make these uncomfortable close-ups, but it always has a purpose. There's a scene right after Cavaldi is introduced where he brings the brothers to Delatom, the general. And it starts off on this close-up of Cavaldi's face, but he's sideways. And it's really awkward and kind of creepy, but it's also supposed to portray the kind of character that Cavaldi is. He's supposed to make you uncomfortable. He is a sort of deranged character, and the camera work makes that point of him being deranged by filming him this way. The problem is that more often than not, these camera techniques are just used to push the really goofy, stupid, campy humor.
Are those snails?
Snails.
All of those skills and all that beautiful lighting and all of the wonderful techniques he likes to use just gets fucking thrown in the garbage because of what's happening on the screen just being fucking dumb. It's just bad. So with all that criticism, how am I supposed to make this movie endearing in any way? I would have to say, watch the film with the intention of making fun of it with a group of friends. You'll have a much better time. Probably making a drinking game out of it too. That will just make it that much more bearable and at least fun to watch. That being said, here are my 3 main points of why The Brothers Grimm is so bad. It's brilliant. Number 1. Peter Stormare. He's the only well-written character. Some of it doesn't make sense, like his having a change of heart at the end of the movie comes out of nowhere. There are no scenes and no moments between Cavaldi and the brothers that make it seem like Cavaldi's going to have a change of heart. There's a couple elements that suggest it, but so minutely that it seems like a giant flip-flop when he decides to be on their side at the end of the movie. But the way that Peter Stormare portrays Cavaldi is great. He's just the right mixture of sinister and idiotic to be really entertaining every time that he's in any of the scenes. It also just proves more and more that Peter Stormare is a very versatile actor. He can do many different things, but he plays silly really well. Plus there's one really goofy ass scene where Cavaldi is startled by a kitten and he kicks him into a meat grinder.
Great Cavaldi, never fun.
And it makes me laugh every single fucking time.
Bingo? Shit. It's bingo.
Point number 2 is wonderfully god-awful CGI. I didn't mention this in any of my other criticisms because it's so bad that it's good. Much like my review of Trick or Treat with the lightning effects. This movie has some really great cinematography, but then it's paired with some of the ugliest CGI I have ever seen in a mid-2000s film. It is seriously so awful that it's impressive. It's impressively bad because it sticks out like a sore thumb. So, to just kind of give you an example, anytime there is CG on the screen, and I don't know how this happened, but it does not match the contrast of the actual film. The CGI looks like it's a different brightness and contrast than everything else that's on the screen, and it's like they didn't match it right. Like all the darks are just a little too light, so it's like the contrast is off. I don't know how else to explain it without showing it to you. And it's so bad. It reminds me of, like, you remember in old cartoons, you could tell when something in a scene was gonna be animated because the background and the thing that's gonna move are different colors. Like, you can actually see what's going to move. This kind of happens in video games too, but you can tell something that's going to be animated versus something that's the background. That's how much it sticks out, and it's just, it blows my mind. The CGI looks so flatly layered over the top of the original film. It's wild to see. Especially considering that this movie came out in 2005. It had a budget of $88 million. Friggin' Jurassic Park came out in what, 98, I think? And then Reign of Fire came out in, I think, 2002. So don't tell me that CGI hadn't come at least up to a decent standard at that point. There is no excuse for the CGI being this bad with a budget like that and seeing some of the visual effects that we've seen in other films. Terry Gilliam has done a lot of films where they use practical effects that work great. In Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, there's a scene where Johnny Depp, playing Hunter S. Thompson, walks into a hotel room and he's starting to trip on acid. And all of the patrons in the hotel lobby / bar start turning into giant lizards. And it's all done with practical effects and costumes, and it looks fucking awesome. You see the entire costume. Like, it's a full-body giant reptile costume.
And somebody was giving booze to these goddamn things.
I don't know why Terry Gilliam went with CGI for this film when it could have easily been done with a mixture of some CGI and much better practical effects. It would have been a lot cooler, especially for a fairy tale movie. I just don't understand why this happened. Point number 3, I'm out of ideas. So I wasn't kidding, turned it into a drinking game. That's the only other thing I could think of. But I actually wrote down some rules for how you can turn it into a drinking game. Here's what you do. Anytime they make a reference to a fairy tale that doesn't involve period, drink. Stick to this and you and your friends will most certainly be trashed or fucking dead by the end of this movie. Of course, feel free to make your own variations on this drinking game if you have seen the movie before. Go ahead, have fun with it. Should be a good time. Hey everybody, sorry to interrupt a video like this. As of right now, I'm about 99% of the way through editing, and I realized I forgot to take the time to put a thank you with this video, because as of right now, I have 51 subscribers, and I just wanted to make a little milestone marker and just say thank you. I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but it actually means the world to me, and I hope to keep growing my channel and growing my audience. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to check out my content. I hope you enjoy the newer stuff that I've been doing. All that being said, let me finish up this video. So, there it is, probably the least enjoyable and most tedious So Bad It's Brilliant I have ever done. But I told myself once I started having difficulties with this that I was gonna see it through, and I wanted to give myself the challenge. So there you go. I had already written a lot of notes and put a lot of work into this video before I picked my channel back up again. So when I came back to making YouTube videos, I decided why not? Let's just go ahead and pick So Bad It's Brilliant back up with this one. We'll make it a unique one and then just move on from there. Like I said, most of my So Bad It's Brilliants are not going to be like this. This was just a challenge for challenge's sake. I am probably going to avoid movies like this in the future because I want these to be fun and enjoyable and just a lot more entertaining. Not just for my sake, but for you guys, the audience, as well. And try and keep it a little more lighthearted. So yeah, it totally sucked to make, but we made it, for better or worse. Alright everybody, that is going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Check me out on Twitter at W3LSH217. You can also find some of my other video game content on Twitch at twitch.tv/W3LSH217. Thank you guys again so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.